5 differences between the alt-right and libertarianism. This is the Black Hat. Welcome back to the show. I hope you're doing great. I'm doing spectacular. You can find archived versions of my show at theblackhat.me. You can also find me on YouTube and iTunes and in the Google Play Store, wherever you get podcasts from Google Play. I wouldn't know. I'm completely Mac-centric, completely Apple-centric, and I have no idea how Android even works. Anyway, let's read this article. It's by Jeffrey Tucker. It was posted on fee.org. And he starts out, and I'm going to be interjecting here in between because I like to do that. And Jeffrey Tucker is a director of content for the Foundation for Economic Education and CLO of the startup Liberty.me, author of 5 books and many thousands of articles. He speaks at FEE summer seminars and other events. His latest book is Bit by Bit, How P2P is Freeing the World. Follow him on Twitter or like him on Facebook. You can also email him or tweet him at Jeffrey A. Tucker at Jeffrey A. Tucker. Anyway, so let's start reading the article here. And I'm going to start out by quoting, "Well, Hillary Clinton has gone and done it." To the cheers of alt-righters everywhere, those angry lords of the green frog meme who hurl edgy, un-PC insults at everyone to their left, the Democratic nominee has put them on the map at long last. Specifically, she accused Donald Trump of encouraging and giving voice to their dark and dangerous worldview. Let's leave aside the question of whether we are talking about an emergent brown-shirted takeover of American political culture, or perhaps merely a few thousand sock puppet social media accounts adept at mischievous trolling on Twitter. The key issue is that more than a few alt-rightists claim some relationship to libertarianism, at least at their intellectual dawning, until they begin to shed their libertarianism later on. What are the differences in outlook between alt-right ideology and libertarianism? This is this is me butting in here. This isn't Jeffrey A. Tucker. So this is something that I've heard a lot of alt-righters say, well, I'm kind of libertarian. In fact, I think I heard Milo Yiannopoulos, the faggy queen of the alt-right movement, say something very similar. Yes, I'm very libertarian in my outlook, but then he attacks libertarians as childish and lacking of foresight. So I don't think he's actually a libertarian. He's an alt-righter. And this is something that I think that Jeffrey Tucker at least is going to try to tease out here what the differences are. And the differences are legion. I'm just going to let you know that to start with here. So let's continue the article. 1, the driving force of history. Every ideology has a theory of history, some sense of a driving theme that causes episodic movements from one stage to another. Such a theory helps us make sense of the past, present, and future. The libertarian theme of history is beautifully articulated by Murray Rothbard. My own basic perspective, and this is Rothbard speaking, on conflict which is eternally waged between liberty and power. I see the liberty of the individual not only as a great moral good in itself, or with Lord Acton as the highest political good, but also as the necessary condition for the flowering of all the other goods that mankind cherishes: moral virtue, civilization, the arts and sciences, economic prosperity. Out of liberty, then, stem the glories of civilized life. Tucker continues, there it is, liberty versus power. Liberty unleashes human energy and builds civilization. Anything that interferes with the progress of liberty impedes the progress of humanity. One crowds out the other. The political or anti-political goal is clear. Diminish power, which means reducing unjust violence, and enhance liberty. As an anarchist, I would say, and this is the black hat butting in again, as an anarchist, I would say any reduction in the state enhances liberty, and any enhancement of liberty improves the human condition. Continuing on with the article here, Frederick Bastiat described the free society as characterized by a, quote, harmony of interests, unquote. What is the alt-right theory of history? The movement inherits a long and dreary condition of thought from Friedrich Hegel to Thomas Carlyle to Oswald Spengler to Madison Grant to Othmar Spann to Giovanni Gentile to Trump's speeches. This tradition sees something else going on in history, not liberty versus power, but something like a more meta struggle that concerns impersonal collectives of tribe, race, community, great men, and so on. Whereas libertarianism speaks of individual choice, alt-right theory draws attention to collectives on the move. It imagines that despite appearances, we all default in our thinking back to some more fundamental instinct about our identity as a people, which is either being shored up by a more intense consciousness or eroded by a deracination and dispossession from what defines us. To criticize this as racist is often true but superficial. What's really going on here is the depersonalization of history itself, the principle that we are all being buffeted about by Olympian historical forces beyond our control as mere individuals. It takes something mighty and ominous like a great leader, an embodiment of one of these great forces, to make a dent in history's narrative. So basically the alt-right is the right version of the left idea of historical imperative. We can't do anything about what history is unfolding in front of us. It takes great men, the Nietzschean Superman, I guess like the alt-right believes Donald Trump is, to come in and take over and push history using his superior will to force history down channels that he sees as being appropriate. It's not history unfolding as a chaotic what I wanted to say is it's not history unfolding as an ordering of the chaotic system. So there's order and chaos, which is what happens as history just sort of naturally unfolds. But that's not what the alt-right sees. What the alt-right sees is a monolith that needs to be forced by a great man like Donald J. Trump. Continuing on with the article, 2. Harmony versus conflict. A related issue concerns our capacity to get along with each other. Frederick Bastiat described the free society as characterized by a, quote, harmony of interests, unquote. In order to overcome the state of nature, we gradually discover the capacity to find value in each other. The division of labor is the great fact of human community. The labor of each of us becomes more productive in cooperation with others, and this is even, or rather especially true, given the unequal distribution of talents, intelligence, and skills, and differences over religion, belief systems, race, language, and so on. And truly, this is a beautiful thing to discover. The libertarian marvels at the cooperation we see in a construction project, an office building, a restaurant, a factory, a shopping mall, to say nothing of a city, a country, or a planet. The harmony of interests doesn't mean that everyone gets along perfectly, but rather that we inhabit institutions that incentivize progress through ever more cooperative behavior. As the liberals of old say, we believe that the, quote, brotherhood of man, unquote, is possible. The libertarian believes that the best and most wonderful social outcomes are not those planned, structured, and anticipated, but rather the opposite. To the alt-right mind, this all seems ridiculous. Sure, shopping is fine, but what actually characterizes human association is deep-rooted conflict. The races are secretly at war. Intellectually and genetically, there is an ongoing and perpetual conflict between the sexes. People of different religions must fight and always will until one wins. Nations fight for a reason. The struggle is real. So basically, this is me interjecting again. Basically, the alt-righter doesn't see that cooperation can lead to these things just falling away. Cooperation can really lead to sexism just falling away, to religions and their perpetual conflicts just falling away, to racism just falling away as we cooperate more and more, as the division of labor becomes more and more complex. Everyone can be involved in producing for everyone else, and then those nexes of conflict melt away. But the alt-righter wants to bring focus to them and continue the conflict with their nemesis on the other side. All right, let's continue. Some argue that war is what defines us and even gives life meaning, and, in that sense, is glorious and celebratory. For this reason, all nations must aspire toward homogeneity in stock, religion, and so on, and as for the sexes, there must be dominance, because cooperation is an illusion. Maybe you notice a certain commonality with the left here. In the 19th century, the Marxists whipped themselves up in a frenzy about the allegedly inherent conflict between labor and capital. Their successors fret incessantly about race, ethnicity, ability, gender, and so on, pushing Marxian conflict theory into ever more exotic realms. Ludwig von Mises captured this parallel brilliantly when he wrote, quote, "Nationalist ideology divides society vertically. The socialist ideology divides society horizontally," unquote. Here, as with many other areas, the far right and far left are strangely aligned. I don't really see anything strange about it. I'm going to disagree. Well, I don't really disagree with Tucker here. They are aligned. He says strangely aligned, but I don't see anything really strange about it. The alt-right and the far left are both extremely authoritarian. The alt-right wants to have national authority. The left wants to have authority based on whether you hurt their feelings, or whether you're thinking properly, or whether you're saying words that they like or don't like. So they're both extremely authoritarian, and that's why they both seem to use very similar methods, ideologies, and thinking in order to come to their conclusions. Let's continue the article. Number 3, designed versus spontaneous order. The libertarian believes that the best and most wonderful social outcomes are not those planned, structured, and anticipated, but rather the opposite. Society is the result of millions and billions of small acts of rational self-interest that are channeled into an undesigned, unplanned, and unanticipated order that cannot be conceived by a single mind. I'm going to break in here, but unfortunately, those small acts of rational self-interest are made irrational when the government interjects itself with things like regulations and incentives. For example, the USDA's incentive to produce corn so that ethanol can be produced, or the USDA's incentive to place perfectly productive land under conservation easements so it can never be used, so that we can have a bunch of green land and really be socialists with the way we deal with our land. Let me continue here. The knowledge that is required to put together a functioning social order is conveyed through institutions, prices, manners, mores, habits, and traditions that no one can consciously will into existence. There must be a process in place and stable rules governing that process that permit such institutions to evolve, always in deference to the immutable laws of economics. Again, the alt-right mind finds all of this uninspired and uninspiring. Society, in their conception, is built by the will of great thinkers and great leaders with unconstrained visions of what can be. What we see out there operating in society is the result of someone's intentional and conscious planning from the top down. Conscious planning from the top down. And I agree with them. That's what they see. They see that great thinkers are the people that have built society. But this top-down idea is the same idea that's used by the left when they want to plan everything. The same idea that's used by the left when they want a bureaucracy in charge of your life. And alt-righters would have no problem with the bureaucracy as long as it's their bureaucracy. Let's continue. If we cannot find the source, or if the source is somehow hiding, we imagine that it must be some shadowy group out there that is manipulating outcomes, and hence the alt-right's obsession with conspiracy theory. The course of history is designed by someone, so we might as well engage in the great struggle to seize the controls, and hence the alt-right obsession with politics as a contact sport. Oh, and by the way, economics is a dismal science. If we didn't have governments, and this is me butting in again, the black hat, if we didn't have government, think about it, there would be no politics. Government is coercion. Government is sanctioned force. Government is violence and theft. And if we didn't have a government, we wouldn't have politics. If we didn't have a huge fucking bureaucracy, we wouldn't have a huge fucking cesspool in Washington to drain, would we? So this idea that Tucker's bringing out here is that alt-righters are not libertarians. Libertarians want to reduce the size of the government. That's right, libertarians want to reduce the size of the government. Libertarians believe that the government is coercive force. Because it is coercive force, because it is violence and theft, libertarians do not want to work inside the government. Rather, they want to reduce the size of the government, maybe even to zero. That's called anarchy, and that is what libertarians want in the end. Some libertarians are minarchists, but libertarianism goes all the way to anarcho-capitalism, which seeks to reduce the size of the government to zero. So there is no politics. There are no levers of power to manipulate at that point. Number 4, trade and migration. The libertarian celebrates the profound changes in the world from the late Middle Ages to the age of laissez-faire, because we observed how commercial society broke down the barriers of class, race, and social isolation, bringing rights and dignity to ever more people. Of course, the classical liberals fought for free trade and free migration of peoples, seeing national borders as arbitrary lines on a map that mercifully restrain the power of the state, but otherwise inhibit the progress of prosperity and civilization. Yes, this is me butting in. Yes, lines on a map are arbitrary. They restrict the state power to a specific geographic location. If those lines dissolve and we have one world government, it's just as bad as having a single payer system in healthcare. Because there are multiple governments, some governments can fail, some governments can succeed, and we can actually see which ones fail and succeed. Now, that's not that I love the government, it's just that we can see that the ones that are freer tend to succeed more, and the ones that are freer tend to have less government. So it shows that reducing the size of the government creates more freedom and prosperity. And from that, we can see that we need to get rid of the government. If there was only one government, we wouldn't be able to see any of that. And it also does inhibit progress and prosperity by not allowing people to move around, by erecting tariffs, which is something that Trump wants to do, which is a horrible fucking idea. I thought we got rid of tariffs in the 19th century and didn't go back to them. Anyway, let's continue here. To think globally is not a bad thing, but a sign of enlightenment. Protectionism is nothing but a tax on consumers that inhibits industrial productivity and sets nations at odds with each other. Okay, I'm going to butt in again. If we erect tariffs on cheaper products coming into the United States, it's going to raise the price of things that we could have bought more cheaply from another country because we are less efficient at producing that thing, and it's going to require us to buy that thing from a less efficient American manufacturer and pay more for it. If we have to pay more for the products that we buy every day, guess what? Our quality and standard of living decreases. Our quality and standard of living decreases. This is why Walmart has been so great for the American people, because it provides things cheaply. If you have to pay less for something, then you can buy more things and you can have a higher standard of living. That kind of makes sense, right? Protectionism is nothing but a tax on consumers that inhibits industrial productivity and sets nations at odds with each other. The market process is a worldwide phenomenon that indicates an expansion of the division of labor, which means a progressive capacity of people to enhance their standard of living and ennoble their lives. The alt-right is universally opposed to free trade and free migration. Build the wall and erect tariffs is what Donald Trump wants to do, butting in here. So that is against free trade and free migration. I'm going to continue. You can always tell a writer is dabbling in alt-right thought or neo-reactionary or dark enlightenment or outright fascism if he or she has an intense focus on international trade as inherently bad or fraudulent or regrettable in some sense. To them, a nation must be strong enough to thrive as an independent unit, an economic sovereignty unto itself. Which actually, if you think about it, is completely stupid. The United States is very good at producing some things, and it's not as good at producing others. It should focus on the things that it's best at producing and leave the production of other things to other people. There's a long economic explanation about why that's right. I would encourage you to read the introductory chapters of Murray Rothbard's Man, Economy, and State. It will lay those things out in no uncertain terms, and it will show why the United States should focus on what it's best at and leave producing other things to other countries, because other countries are better at producing those things, and if you focus on what you're most efficient at and leave things that you're less efficient at to other countries, it's a net efficiency increase for everyone, and once again, standard of living increases, quality of life increases. Let's continue. Today, the alt-right has a particular beef with trade deals, not because they are unnecessarily complex or bureaucratic, which are good reasons to doubt their merit, but because of their meritorious capacity to facilitate international cooperation. And it is the same with immigration. So on the trade deal side, this is the black hat again, on the trade deal side, we have Donald Trump just absolutely raking NAFTA over the coals. Absolutely. NAFTA is the most horrible deal we've ever had. NAFTA produces a trade deficit. NAFTA this, NAFTA that. And let's continue. Beginning at some point in the late 19th century, migration came to be seen as a profound threat to national identity, which invariably means racial identity. And this is absolutely the case with the alt-right. I cannot tell you how many alt-righters I have listened to, and I'm a libertarian, not an alt-righter. Occasionally I get roped into saying alt-right things, and then I realize how stupid I sound, so I stop saying them. So anyway, I can't tell you how many alt-righters I have seen that say things like, by 2040, white people will be a minority in the United States. Who the fuck cares? Who cares? The only thing that matters is, even if we are a minority, and I happen to be a white person, even if we are a minority, is there more freedom? Now, I don't care that there's a minority of white people. What I care about is, do the people who have come to the United States love liberty? Or did they come here because we have a massive federal government with massive unfunded mandates who is going to give them a bunch of free shit so that they can slide through life without working? That's not effective, and that tends to happen with people who come here from certain areas. It's not that they shouldn't come here. Absolutely not. No. I think that anybody who wants to come to the United States and add to the liberty experiment is absolutely welcome. But coming here to force the government to take money from people who are producing things and give it to you just because you managed to get across the border is absolutely insane. And it is part of the problem that I have with immigration. I don't have a problem with immigration if you're going to come and add to the experiment. I have a problem with immigration if you're going to come and add to the welfare rolls. I would say that is absolutely ineffective and not something that I would want to see for my country. Free immigration if you're going to come get a job and work hard. Don't come here if you're looking for welfare handouts. And I always say that. Free immigration needs to come with no welfare. And then I'm fine with it. 5. Emancipation and progress. The Libertarian celebrates the profound changes in the world from the late Middle Ages to the age of laissez-faire, because we observed how commercial society broke down the barriers of class, race, and social isolation, bringing rights and dignity to ever more people. Slavery was ended. Women were emancipated, as marriage evolved from conquest and dominance into a free relationship of partnership and consent. This is all a wonderful thing because rights are universal, which is to say, they rightly belong to everyone equally. Anything that interferes with people's choices holds them back and hobbles the progress of prosperity, peace, and human flourishing. This perspective necessarily makes the libertarian optimistic about humanity's potential. I'm going to butt in here one more time and just say that libertarians, and me included, I tend to be an optimist. People will say, well, this or that or the other thing, it's horrible, this is horrible, that's horrible, and I'll point to many, many examples in history, for example, where freedom of speech was curtailed, where taxes were higher, where were conscripted into war or whatever. Those things don't happen as much now. We're much freer than we used to be, and we keep getting more and more free and more globally integrated, and standards of living rise more and more as we go year after year. Let's continue. The alt-right mind can't bear this point of view and regards it all as naive. What appears to be progress is actually loss of culture, identity, and mission. They look back to what they imagine to be a golden age when elites ruled and peons obeyed, and thus we see the source of their romantic attachment to authority as the source of order and the longing for authoritarian political rule As for universal rights, forget it. Rights are granted by political communities and are completely contingent on culture. The ancients universally believed that some were born to serve and some to rule, and the alt-right embraces this perspective. Here again, identity is everything, and the loss of identity is the greatest crime against self anyone can imagine. Conclusion. The alt-right knows exactly who its enemies are, and the libertarians are among them. To be sure, as many commentators have pointed out, both libertarians and alt-rightists are deeply suspicious of democracy. This was not always the case. In the 19th century, the classical liberals generally had a favorable view of democracy, believing it to be the political analogy to choice in the marketplace. But here they imagined states that were local, rules that were fixed and clear, and democracy as a check on power. As states become huge, as power became total, and as rules became subject to pressure group politics, the libertarians' attitude toward democracy shifted. In contrast, the alt-right's opposition to democracy traces to its loathing of the masses, generally, and its overarching suspicion of anything that smacks of equality. In other words, they tend to hate democracy for all the wrong reasons. This similarity is historically contingent and largely superficial given the vast differences that separate the two worldviews. Does society contain within itself the capacity for self-management or not? That is the question. None of this will stop the mainstream media from lumping us all together, given that we share a dread of what has become of the left in politics today. But make no mistake, the alt-right knows exactly who its enemies are, and the libertarians are among them. That was an article by Jeffrey Tucker from the Foundation for Economic Education, FEE.org. The article was entitled 5 Differences Between the Alt-Right and Libertarianism, and FEE offers its articles under the Creative Commons license, so I am free to read it in full as long as I give credit where credit is due. And Mr. Tucker, wonderful article. This has been The Black Hat. Thank you for listening. You can find me at theblackhat.me. You can find there my blog and archived articles of this show, and you can also listen to me on iTunes and Google Play, and if you want it from YouTube, you can run a video stream that contains the audio of this program as well. This has been The Black Hat. I hope you're doing great. I'm doing absolutely fabulous, and we will talk to you on the next episode. Have a wonderful day.